All right, let's get to our top story this morning, which is President Biden speaking yesterday at the Business Roundtable, talking about some private meetings that he's been having with his military leaders, which I don't know if he's supposed to be sharing this or not. Like, he's like, hey, I had some private meetings. They were like secure meetings, but I'm going to tell you what we were talking about. And in these meetings, he revealed that, hey, the United States is primed, as in a position now to take on the leadership role in this new world order. Let's play what he had to say, and then we're going to unpack this because there's a lot of things here to talk about. Let's listen.
You know, we are at an inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. So anyway.
Okay, Alex Jones.
Holy smokes. Right. I mean, I look, by the way, yes, and we can go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. And there's a lot of like discussion online about this. And you can say conspiracy theories, this, conspiracy theories, that. But this stuff has been happening, right? This new world order plan has been tied to, we talked about the World Economic Forum, the discussion about the Great Reset, these leaders saying, hey, come together. Here's what we want to have happen, literally laying it out at the Economic World Forum, which really sought to use the COVID-19 crisis, much the way that Carol Roth describes in her book, The War on Small Business, eliminating small business, consolidating power in these hands of Western leaders. And he's citing specifically the book, The Fourth Turning. He talks about that.
Well, why are conspiracy theorists so crazy about this? So specifically online, this is trending right now, where liberals are saying, oh, conservatives are starting to make this into a conspiracy theory regarding new type of shadow government that has to do with the cabal or Freemasons, that it's just a few people, including sometimes Queen Elizabeth, right, sometimes not, who are running a shadow government in order to get other people to do their bidding. That's sort of what, a conservative or certain people have said, this is what's happening. We've been telling you, right? And liberals are like, knock it off. That's not exactly what he meant. So so there's that sort of, let's put that in the corner, this Freemason cabal, Queen Elizabeth piece of it, and talk about the maybe a bit more tangible piece.
Okay. So what is the tangible piece? I mean, I think he specifically said it in his speech. He talked about the Fourth Turning. And the Fourth Turning specifically is written by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It was recommended to me a number of years ago by a friend of mine, and said it's really eye-opening. We are entering into this phase now where we have this sort of cataclysm, and it happens every 100 years or so, this Fourth Turning. This idea basically that every 100 years it ends a cycle in human history.
Yes.
Because of natural human rhythms and human lifespan, that we enter these cycles, and that's what's happening right now, and that we are now in a position, because of the sinking of the U.S. dollar, because of all of these countries now taking a position against the U.S. dollar, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, other countries saying, hey, maybe the U.S. dollar isn't all it's cracked up to be. We're moving away from a U.S.-backed U.S. dollar and into a central bank structure. Mm-hmm. So central banks run the show. Central banks would be the thing that would bring everything together and rule the roost and control Western civilization. Think of it like as imperial
sort
powers.
of a campaign to spread Westernization far and wide, mm-hmm, with perpetual war and no end in sight, right? Just a continued USA wave of stars and stripes that just continues to go, because now once we need like just a little push, the United
USA,
States,
globalist structure.
Think about
right,
this,
but
like a
led
lot of people
by Western ideals. Right. Go ahead.
A lot of people aren't talking about the fact that Zelensky, everybody's standing up and like, Ukraine, rah, rah, rah. While Zelensky is basically creating a dictatorship right now, because he just silenced got rid of 11 parties from his opposition, and we're celebrating that. And like, if the United States would love nothing more than to do that. If you look at like what they did in the last election by trying to get third parties off of the ballots, that's starting to happen here. So it's like we're starting to celebrate authoritarianism on the left, which is a very dangerous place to be.
And a consolidation of the banking. I mean, it all comes down to money, guys. I mean, it's money, right, and it's control. And it's, if we can move off the US dollar, we can move towards a digital currency, and we can have a UN-backed, not a UN-backed, a EU, American-backed, Western imperial banking structure that really crushes small businesses, consolidates power. Think of it as NATO. I mean, for all intents and purposes, think of it as NATO. And I think that's what he's saying here. And I don't just like brush this aside. I mean, it is a really eye-opening moment to hear him say this. And I think
yes, but also he seemed a little out of it. So can we give him?
I think it was pretty coherent. I actually think, yes, he's mostly out of it. But I think let's listen to him again. He specifically
Do you think
references.
This is that intentional? I'm just playing devil's advocate to say, are we parsing words here that maybe he didn't mean to say?
I mean, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, maybe you should apologize to Alex Jones, who people like vilified over the past number of years about this. I saw someone saying, hey, can we start the Alex Jones was right jar? Someone in our chat just said like a jar putting like coins in there. And this is kind of going viral. I know we had it in What's Trending, but like this has been going viral over the past few hours. Like, is Alex Jones owed an apology? I mean, Biden did just say they're working on a new world order.
But I'm confused by the way we're defining this, though. Are we defining this as Alex Jones, like conspiracy theory, or are we defining it in something that we all maybe can get on board with, which has nothing to do with specific world leaders, but like a rolling out of an indoctrination, right? Like, I think we should be careful here because
I think what Carol Quigley said, this professor, because if you go deeper into this, right, you go deeper into like this World Economic Forum structure. I did over the past few weeks as this Great Reset has been floated repeatedly. You've been hearing about it, this idea of the Great Reset. And then we had Carol Roth on the show who kind of broke it down for us and said, this is happening right before our eyes. Like, this is happening. This is unfolding. Carol Quigley is a professor, and she wrote in the book Tragedy and Hope, the powers of financial capitalism had a far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country.
Don't we already have that?
Not necessarily when you have a reliance on certain countries like the US dollar. So when you have each country and the economy then run by a central banking system, okay?
Yes.
So not US dollar, but a central banking system. This system was to be controlled by a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at in frequent meetings and at frequent conferences. Laid it out here in her book, Tragedy and Hope. And so this is basically a fundamental transforming of the global economy in favor of this new world order. I don't think he was incoherent here. I know we can make fun of Biden a lot for saying stuff off the wall, but he specifically cites meeting with military leaders in a secure meeting and references 3 to 4 generational turn, which is the fourth turning, and talks about how the United States and Western leaders will lead this. Let's listen again, because I don't think he was speaking out of turn.
Point, I believe, in the world economy, not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's gonna be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. We've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
And specifically Ukraine. He was citing Ukraine specifically as this fulcrum, this pivotal moment right now.
Because if you can westernize a country so far east, you can keep going.
You can keep going. And then it's only a push to overthrow. It's a push against China. It's a push against Russia. It's a consolidation of power in the hands. We've already done it in the Middle East. We were trying to do it in Latin America. It's this constant push. And so pay attention to what they're saying. I'm just saying, all of these pieces have started to fall into place. You saw it during COVID. You saw the centralization of the banks. You saw the consolidation of the central banks.
Yeah.
You saw the crushing of small businesses. You see it before our eyes what's happening in Ukraine. You see what's happening with NATO and the expansion of NATO into Putin's backyard. Look what's happening with sanctions against China.
What is the historical precedence for this where it's been successful before? Like Roman times?
Well, I think if we think about in terms of the fourth turning, again, we come back to the book, I think about every 100 years, right? And so this is a move away now from industrialization. It's a move away from the smoke-filled factories of the 1880s, the 1890s, the Gilded Age, you know? Like we see this HBO show now, the Gilded Age. It's like a romanticism of that period, you know, 100 years ago. And so now you're seeing the same thing unfolding. And there's about a 20-year position of transition in that happens during this phase. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying there's 500 years of history that William Strauss and Neil Howe highlight in the book. 500 years, and it's been consistent. They do it with data, and they show how these patterns continue to emerge among societies after that 100-year period. So, I would love to hear people's thoughts on this. How many of you have read the book, The Fourth Turning? We'll link it up in the chat below. Maybe we can have a discussion about it in a few weeks after everyone's had a chance to read it. But, you know, the President of the United States says something like this and references this book, talks about it with his military leaders. We should all pay attention. And it's happening before our eyes because now we have this no-fly zone issue, which is another big piece of this puzzle, right?
Right. So this morning, the Wall Street Journal and other media reporting that the United States has been sending defense equipment to Ukraine that it previously received from the USSR or Russia, depending on the year, is unclear. They're saying that this is decades old equipment, but they also say that it's very effective still. So it doesn't have its 100,000 miles on it. It's still okay. And they say that Ukraine's military is familiar with these types of weapons, and they will continue to train to use them. So some date these missile defense systems as old as 1994, right? Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. So then where have we been keeping these? And we've been keeping up to date with how to use them, and we can arm the other side to use them. So if you think it feels sneaky that we have these weapons, it absolutely is. In fact, if you read the Wall Street Journal this morning, they talk about how it was actually the media that let us know that we were buying these pieces of equipment. It was not the United States government. They were sort of caught red-handed.
Right.
Pun intended.
And by the way, good job on the Wall Street Journal for actually covering this story and breaking this. This was an exclusive story that the Wall Street Journal broke the news on.
Yes. But also it's equally as sneaky to arm and train a nation for a no-fly zone that you say you do not support, right? So again, we're talking about how would Russia perceive our actions as not a direct conflict threat and retaliate. Well, one could argue that we have done many things already to support Ukraine and have already chosen sides. Again, history tells you that when a leader is trying to be careful not to get involved in a conflict, they will split hairs to do that, right? And the United States doesn't seem to care to do that right now. We seem to be okay to sort of wave the Ukrainian flag and say we support them, we're against Russia, but we won't actually get involved in conflict. But here's some money, here's some weapons, here's some training, here's some private contractors, right? So how can we be sure that, you know, this battle is not coming to our shores? We really can't at this point. No, and this is why you want to have it over there, right? I mean, this is the whole point. This is the whole, this is, just listen to members of Congress talk about this, right? This is, we have all of the Soviet era equipment. And by the way, who knows where the hell we've had it? To your point, it's probably in one of our 900 military bases, around the world that we have it stored. We have it in some underground base that we can quickly deploy it at a moment's notice and get it to these people is pretty darn remarkable. I know. I thought there was a supply chain issue, but apparently not if it's weaponry. No, you can get it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can get it there very, very quickly. But again, this is what they want. They want to be able to fight this war. They want to be able to have Ukraine fighting this war, and we want to be able to set up an artificial, basically a no-fly zone without calling it a no-fly zone. That's basically what we're doing right now. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. We can have our cake and eat it too by not calling it that. We can have our war without calling it a war. Right. And especially these are not loans, right? These are just take the weaponry and use it as you'd like. Again, they also say Ukraine's military is very familiar with how to use these. We're okay. They've read the manual. But supposedly Russians would be too if it was made on their shores. So, the Russian military is very sophisticated, despite what the media would have you think. So it doesn't seem, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a military strategist. It just seems like there's a lot of holes in this, right? You can poke a lot of holes in it.
Well, we've been continuing, all of these NATO countries have been continuing to send military equipment to this region. I mean, pouring it into it. Do you remember the other day when, of course, we had President Biden saying, right, we played the clip for you, where he talked about sending military equipment into that region is World War III. He said, make no mistake about it, that is World War III.
But then and he said, that's exactly what they're doing.
He said, don't kid a kidder.
Right.
I mean, am I the only one who remembers that? Do you guys remember that in the chat?
I already had forgotten about it, but you just reminded me, and he
did
indeed.
Yeah, did anyone remember?
I remember.
I mean, so again, this is not the first time, and I don't know what's changed in a few weeks. I don't know what's changed in a few weeks since the president said that. Like, hey, we're going to run missions off the coast of Poland. We're going to continue to run these sortie missions, 80 to 90 per day right now. We're running NATO missions. We're going to continue to pour javelins, Stinger missiles. By the way, this morning, speaking of the Wall Street Journal, I watched a whole video that the Wall Street Journal put together on all of these javelin missiles and this the different different weapons you wear on your shoulder, the Stinger missiles, everything else that they can hit. And it's remarkable. I mean, the level of access that the media is getting to watch the Ukrainian troops look at all of the different weapons that we're sending them and studying how they're operating. And they just showed pallet after pallet after pallet being unloaded from aircraft, coming from the United States, from Ukraine, everywhere, pouring in, from the UK and everywhere, just pouring into this region.
That just seems so unsafe. I don't know if you recall, several years ago, there was a piece on the Israeli military on 60 Minutes, and they said this is an exclusive. The Israeli military does not let press in. They're only going to show us a few things, and most of it they could not even show because of trade secrets. And so why is all of this sort of like muscle flexing happening on behalf of Western powers at this point? What are we supposed to take away from that when really, I think most military strategists would say we don't need these things on television, right?
No, I mean, but look, but you have, members of Congress. You had Chuck Schumer holding up pictures of the aircraft, and he's like, these are the ones we're sending them.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to send them.
At the time, remember this piece, the Israeli army would only show 60 Minutes that they can go from like 0 to the air in like 3 seconds. Like there's always someone ready to suit up and go up. Jeez. It was crazy. Like what really the military can do is way more formidable than just what they're showing off to the press.
Of course.
So we have to think, what are they trying to show us here? And aren't they worried that also the enemy has the internet?
Right, to be able to pay attention. I don't know. I'm not really worried about the enemy at the moment watching this because they already have access to this, All
they're trying to do is get the people's they're manufacturing war. They're getting the people's consent by showing us and making it look like they're being transparent or whatever. But again, I come back to anybody who stands with Ukraine. You got those flags on your profiles. You got all this stuff. You are now supporting a dictator. And we are now supporting a dictator, basically, because he's got rid of all the opposition that could get him out as president. So, that to me.
But don't worry, David, because now Vladimir Zelensky is now calling on the Pope. He wants the Pope to come in and mediate this whole thing. That's what he wants. Get the Pope involved in all of this.
Are they going to send like the Vatican Guard?
Right.
No, they're just going to send a
Catholic
basket
country.
full of. They're going to send a basket full of white doves.
Right. Well, I just think go back to Congress, right? Adam Schiff on the floor of Congress. This soundbite a few weeks ago just resonates with me because he just says the quiet part out loud. Here's Adam Schiff about why we're doing what we're doing with sending equipment over there.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
That's all you need. Like, it's not any more difficult than that to understand. It's not. That's it. Right there in a 2-sentence soundbite.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
Right. That's exactly right. So we can fund. Why do you think we have bioweapons labs set up in those countries? Why do you think that we've set up different chemical labs in those areas? Right. I mean, why? So we don't have to have them here. We don't have to. But the revealing nature about the Georgia, what we covered in the newsletter about Georgia and the country of Georgia and the weapons labs that have now been come to light since 2018. We'll maybe talk more about it later this week. But again, American funding of chemical research into anthrax and other chemical agents in these other countries, so that they don't, and they do them at like 2 and 3 in the morning. So residents say they smell these chemicals at like 2 and 3 in the morning. And
I don't get
I
how
just
we're
want
always.
to go back to this point. Ukraine is Orthodox Christian, right? Poland is Catholic, but I do not think that Zelensky, also he's Jewish, but for the most part, their founding religion was Orthodoxy, was not Catholicism. So what is he doing? Calling on the Pope?
I don't know. Maybe thinks that would tamp down on what Russia is doing. I don't know exactly.
I'm
Why
just
does every
confused
sense
by
got to
that
be
move.
about fighting Russia? Like, we've always got to fight Russia. But like after World War II, when the Russians helped liberate the Jews, like they were part of that, and lost 27 million people during that war. But then right when the war is over, what do? We start NATO and say, you know what? We still don't trust you. We know you helped liberate. We know you helped pretty much end World War II, but we still don't trust you. So we're going to, build these bases and expand this NATO into your backyard.
Well, I want to just clarify, people who change their profiles to the Ukrainian flag at this point, I think a lot of them are not necessarily supporting Zelensky or the Ukrainian government, which has been notorious for being corrupt. But I think that many of their intention is to support people who are now having to escape their home due to conflict they did not start.
But how come those same people never put an Afghanistan flag, a Yemen flag?
Well, there's not any
Like,
one person we contend with right now. But we can contend with the popularity of it. And you're right, those same people should have had all along, for 6 years now, a Yemeni flag, at least since last year, Ethiopia. For at least 5 or 6 years now, Syria, more than that, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
No, Syria is almost going on 20 years.
But is it any
conflict.
different?
Reminder: the world's deadliest war isn't in Ukraine, but it's in Ethiopia.
And is it any different if you have a friend that you support and you're driving your friend around and then they rob a bank? You're still an accomplice. You're still part of it, even though you were supporting them for a good reason. Because the thing is, like, we are selling this as we're helping the Ukrainian people because we care, when we're not. We're propping up a dictator at this point. And so, yeah, by proxy, you are supporting a dictator, even if you have good intentions.
Well, let's leave room for people's intentions to care about at least people who are victimized. And I want to be careful about that.
Well,
Because
I
don't
agree with
wanna-
that, but that's like,
Yeah.
educate yourself then a little bit if you're going to do that. Like, know what you're doing.
If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.